Hey there, I'm Joey from EDH Rec, and alright, listen, I know a lot of Modern Horizons cards like Nadu are sucking all of the air out of the room right now, but I want to talk to you about my favorite legend from Modern Horizons 3, and it's the one that is smack dab at the bottom of the list. Skoa Embermage, a 6-mana 4/4 that deals 4 damage anywhere when it hits the field. Yes, my favorite legend from Modern Horizons 3 is a common with a scant 21 decks to its name, and it's sporting one ability that is almost meaningless in singleton formats. This card delights me to no end. It's a return to the Grandeur mechanic, an effect we haven't seen since Future Sight, and it's also a callback to one of the coolest red burn spells in Magic history. I played a lot of 60-card Constructed in the Time Spiral and Future Sight days, so I was just enamored with Skoa as soon as I saw it. And if you got to play MH3 Limited, I think it's a cool reward if you manage to get multiple copies in draft or sealed. Now obviously, Grandeur is a bit of a non-starter in EDH. There are clever folks who will find weird ways to make non-legendary copies of a commander, then bounce the original copy to hand and then activate Grandeur that way, but I don't have time for all that. See, I'm not just interested in the nostalgia of that effect, I also just like a red legend with a good enter the battlefield ability, because I just want to use red cards to repeat that effect over and over and over and over. I've built Ryonya, I've tinkered with Jaxus, I've flirted with Ortheon and Delina and Kiki-Jiki, but all of them do the copying, and I want a copy target. I want a consistent creature that I can point clone effects at to re-trigger a fun ability. And along came Skoa, who is, by rights, not a great creature nor a great commander. We have more impactful cards all over this format, more compelling targets to clone or to make temporary copies of that will tear apart a field or take over a game with those abilities. Heck, if I wanted this deck in Monor Red, I could have built this with Atsushi, because making copies of that legend would allow you to repeat that death trigger. But I don't care about those. I love this goblin. It only has 21 decks to its name right now, and dang it, I'm gonna make it 22. So I put together a whole dang list. A list devoted to powering out this burning little scamp and then making copies of it. The copies will immediately die, of course, but the effects will still trigger, which means I'll get to fling damage all over the place. And of course, I won't just make copies, I'll also flicker Skoa. And in fact, there are more than a few cards here that will care about it hitting the field over and over again to make even more nonsense happen. This is far and away one of the jankiest ways to deal damage, but that is kind of the whole point. A lot of the other legends that I tried for this type of red deck are already in the 99 of this list, and the reason that I didn't keep them as decks was because they were so efficient at it that they just kind of dominated the game. I want something a little sillier. Heck, I'm ignoring half the text on the commander. It puts me in mind of all of those Phage the Untouchable players, you know? I like the idea of a deck that shouldn't work, but you can challenge yourself to make it work anyway. Honestly, this deck is also just a testament to Red's damage enablers and amplifiers, fiery emancipation effects, Warstorm Surge abilities. With the right setup, a single creature hitting the field is all that Red needs to totally transform the landscape of a game. There are plenty of ways to copy Skoa when it enters too, so what might look like just one ETB effect may actually be 2 or 3 or 5. And heck, did you know Skoa's a wizard? So things like Harmonic Prodigy are happy to copy that trigger too. And of course, Roaming Throne is infamous for a lot of reasons, but one of them is definitely that it's useful to just copy a single commander's triggers. I'm pretty fond of the backup options too, in case Skoa gets too expensive to cast or gets pinned down in some other way. Even a simple Inferno Titan can get pretty nasty when you have a bunch of damage doublers around. Or Fanatic of Mogus? That's a genuine game ender in Mono Red. And Hellcat Courser is hilarious to bring the commander out for just one more quick jam session. Oh, and I can't neglect fun lands either, whether it's Valakut packing some extra damage or some commander-specific lands helping to get Skoa into hand if I ever need to get that effect one last time. Alright, is this deck good or powerful? A lot of these cards are good and powerful, that's for sure. And when you cast a Skoa whose damage is currently being tripled and then you're able to double that trigger, so then suddenly you're throwing around like 24 damage, I mean, yeah, that's neat. But a lot has to go right to live that dream. Still though, when we're barraged on all sides and at all times with commanders that feel like they are chemically engineered to explicitly be powerful in the commander format, it brings me a lot of joy to play a commander that feels the total opposite, to play one that is deliberately intended for limited and constructed environments, and to see if I can still make that fetch happen anyway. Plus, like I mentioned before, this is a pace of Mono Red that I can really appreciate. There are a lot of very, very intriguing and powerful Mono Red legends out there. Legends that are so good and so cool, and I enjoy playing against them whenever I see them. But we all know that they are terrors. They do what Monor Red is famous for, and they can end a game in the blink of an eye. They get to lethal damage before other decks even finish putting their pants on. That's a fantastic dynamic to have in a game, but it's not always the experience that we all come to EDH for, where sometimes the appeal is that beer and pretzels vibe. You know, leaning back, getting eager to cast 8 and 9 mana spells. When I had some of those other Mono Red decks put together, such as Rayanya, those decks were awesome, but they were kind of operating at that Krenko or Purphoros type of speed, which resulted in some games that felt like they ended before they even got the chance to begin. With Skoa, I think I'll get some of those same effects I'm after, wild entrances and tons of copies and bonkers triggers, but I think I'll get them at a lower gear, a speed I'm a lot more interested in traveling at when I'm with my friends. So what do you think of this deck? Do you think it should exist? Do you think it might be viable, or is this still a little bit of a long shot? Have you built around any commanders that have like no data to them on EDH Rec, or have you ever made a deck that didn't initially look like it would work in EDH? Share your thoughts down below, click the happy YouTube buttons while you're down there, and as always, remember, EDH Rec your deck before you wreck your deck.